Over the past 10 years, I have talked with so many petites about their insecurities and all of the different things that happen as a petite in our lives. So I think from a point of trying to navigate all of what that life looks like as far as trying to be taken seriously in work environments or serious life moments, or if you just want to look a little bit older or whatever the case may be, the way that we dress, it has so much to do with how we're taken seriously and basically the message that we want to send the rest of the world of who we are, what we represent as an individual. And so in order to navigate that, there have been all of these rules that have been quite rigid on how petites should dress, and we don't have as many options in all of this. In fact, one of the earliest videos on this topic was something I produced like 8 years ago. And so I wanted to discuss today about where we are in 2025, how boxing ourselves in might not always be the answer, and different ways that we can sort of dispel some of the more outdated rules and start dressing like ourselves in a new way. Okay, the first out of all of these rules that I want to throw out or rewrite is the idea that we have to avoid oversized or chunky accessories. So this, of course, means jewelry. It also means things like bags. The reason behind this is this less is more sort of mentality. I think that it's probably a generalization that petites have maybe fair or small features, and so we don't want to overwhelm those. But I think that what's really happening here is that no matter your size, it could be that you're very tall or anything, if you have very faint or simple features, I would say that people like that are my friends have been like loving the less is more look. Yet I don't really love the less is more look for me, like on myself. Looking back after all of these years of styling outfits and discovering my personal style, I've found that my taste is more in the maximalism realm. And there's a few reasons I think that I could get into later as far as why I personally love this look. But it's really important to assess if this rule really matches your taste. Now, one way that we can look at this too is if you are someone who likes a lot of embellishments on your top part of your body, meaning like I like to have longer hair, I like to have lots of necklaces, I like to have embellishments on my tops, then I know that less is more is not my cup of tea, and it probably has a lot to do with my build and my features. So even though I am considered petite, I am not by any means somebody who is less is more, and I usually just end up looking kind of tired if I go with that look. So really think through if this is one of those rules that fits you personally, and I guarantee it has nothing to do with your height. The only one that might be a little bit odd for a petite is if the bag is absolutely massive. I like to go with a tote bag that is normal size, but I now don't even live by the tiny bag rule. I like to have something that makes sense for my day, and I can sort of balance the outfit to the tote, and it's okay. On that note, the next rule that I totally want to dispel for everybody is this idea that petites can't wear oversized or baggy clothing. This is completely false, and it was something that I did so much, and it's probably my biggest regret looking back, because I definitely built my wardrobe to last me 10 years, but not fit me 10 years. While my body composition has changed here or there, it's less about how comfortably it fits and more just like the drape. I would rather now sort of go with this trend that is much more drapey and oversized, and that's because it just has such a beautiful look that I really like, and there's some pieces that I think would have been absolutely perfect that I found years ago if it was just maybe 3 sizes larger. I would not go 3 sizes larger in a lot of materials or cuts that are super boxy, so keep that in mind, but I love it when it has a beautiful drape like a silk or even a cashmere, or maybe a cotton that has some spandex in it and it just like lays absolutely perfectly and flows and contours with my body. That is amazing, and I would love to get that in something much larger than my normal size. But if it is something that is a stiffer material, like maybe a tweed, or maybe some of my more boxy sweaters, or a linen, most of the time I'm going to not size up on those just because they should have that more tailored look. But that's not to say that I wouldn't wear like an oversized linen shirt and then just have that maybe sort of breezily open with maybe a bikini top underneath for the summer or something like that. But by and large, I'm looking for an oversized drape appearance and less about things being so stiff and just visibly uncomfortable. The next rule I want to dispel is choosing high-waisted everything. The reason that I think that this is a little outdated is just because we're in this very specific moment in time where you can shop from any brand and they've got a range of things that work high-waisted and low-rise. But the thing is for this that I used to die on the hill of high-waisted everything. I absolutely still wear high-waisted. There's nothing that's going to change about that. I'm always going to love high-waisted. But I started to introduce low-rise for me personally because it is so different than the low-rise of like the early 2000s. Because if you look back at those times, it was basically straight across, and then it was super, super tight fitting most of the time. And so what you had there is, like for me, where I've got literally on a skeletal level, my hips are wider and the bones in my legs are just shorter, then that doesn't really match my proportions very well compared to a high-waisted pair of trousers, for instance, or anything like that. So what happens then is that if you are somebody who maybe doesn't have the long torso and short legs proportions, you're probably already working with something closer to a mid-rise or a low-rise. But also the way that they have been structured nowadays for low-rise is completely different, where you've got a rise that maybe is lower in the front, but it still is higher in the back. And so it creates this more slope. And then the way that the pants drape is so much different. It's baggier and it just works for somebody even with my proportions. And I actually think it's a very interesting look if done right. So I have sort of dabbled in both realms. If the pants have a wonderful drape, I am very open to wearing some low-rise jeans or some low-rise like silk pants, and I love that look. But it doesn't mean that I will only be going to low-rise all of a sudden. It really just matters on the pair of pants, and thankfully people are being more considerate on how to design pants that work for different body shapes, and just being mindful of your build goes a mile. Like, it's gonna make you look absolutely amazing. Another hill that I once died on is the idea of always tucking in your top. There are some ways that I now don't do that. Of course, I will still tuck in my top sometimes, and I think it creates a really lovely appearance, especially if you are like me and you've got more of an hourglass look, because it's very important to just show that. Otherwise, clothing can look very shapeless or overwhelming. But there are several ways that you can still style things without tucking in your top. Part of this does have to do with how not everything is high-rise now, but also the way that things are cropped can really lend themselves to different styling. So obviously if something's cropped, you don't have to tuck it in, but if everything is sort of loose and oversized, then you can just let it drape or even be maybe open toward the bottom as far as the shirt, and then that will just sort of create this illusion that's really lovely. Overall, it isn't something where everything has to be, you know, that uncomfortable appearance of everything being tucked in and just perfect and tailored and, you know, everything. Like, that can be a look for some occasions and some people and some styles, but it also can look so beautiful if you are more inventive with the ways that you're styling things to still create a silhouette that looks good for yourself. The next old rule is the idea of choosing necklines that work for you as a petite. I want to rephrase this way of thinking because it is asking the wrong question. It's not which necklines work for petites, it's which necklines work for me. And that has so much to do with different nuances, like if your neck is longer or shorter, it could have to do with your shoulder width, or it could have to do with your chest size. It also might be in line with the thinking of if you have longer hair, then you might want more of an open neckline. And if you have shorter hair, you might do well with things that have like a higher neckline, but not always. There is so much nuance to this. Aside from trial and error, I wouldn't say that there's so many hard and fast rules about which necklines that petites should wear. For me personally, I still absolutely love anything that is an open neckline or a sweetheart neckline. I love those things, but I also can work with things like a boat neck, and this has so much to do with my build. There's just so many factors that I sort of want to just pause and reframe this train of thought and start to make it more about what looks good on a personal level. If you're really not sure about which necklines work for you, then I would always say, if in doubt, wear a V-neck. That is something that is universally flattering and elongating, and so if you're trying to be elongating as a petite, that is a pretty sure way to look great. But that's not to say that we have to always shop from petite brands. That's my next tip, is that absolutely you do not have to limit yourself to just shopping from child sections or petite brands. They can be go-tos if the quality or the creativity or maybe your personal taste is aligned with that brand. If all of that is there, then absolutely look there, because then it might save you a trip to the tailor. But it is so much better as just a way of navigating style to look elsewhere. Like, don't limit yourself just based on that, but look at all of these different brands and see where you're more aligned on a creative level. I have a few top brands right now that absolutely have won my heart, and they're so in line with even the key words that I personally use for my style. And I'm so glad that I don't limit myself based on if the name petite has anything to do with the brand itself. I just find when that becomes the focus, it sterilizes and sanitizes the look and feel of how I want my clothes to sit on me. And of course, they are more tailored instead of having that more oversized and drapey and comfortable feel. And really, creativity is the heartbeat behind why I wanted to make this video today, just to summarize some things that maybe you've noticed have changed as far as my personal taste through the years and how I wear clothing, and also just some things that need to be rephrased, as I do have all of these videos out there as far as what to wear, and I thought it needed a good old 2025 update. This is your forecast as far as what to expect moving forward, and we can move so much more into the nuances of all of these things if you want a series out of this. So let me know in the comments down below if you want that, and I'll catch up with you there.